Hello everybody, welcome to Stonx Music. My name's Ollie and today we're going to be having a look at drum bus in this deep dive episode. Let's go! So here we are back in the Ableton manual. Let's see what they have to say about drum bus. Drum bus is an analog style drum processor that was designed to add body and character to a group of drums while gluing them together in a tight mix. The trim slider lets you reduce the input level before any processing is applied to the signal. The comp toggle applies a fixed compressor to the input signal before it is processed by the distortion. The compressor is optimized for balancing out groups of drums, with fast attack, medium release, and a moderate ratio setting, as well as an ample makeup gain. There are 3 types of distortion which can be applied to the input signal. Each distortion type adds an increasing degree of distortion, whilst lending its own character to the overall sound. Soft, wave shaping distortion; medium, limiting distortion; hard, clipping distortion with bass boost. For more intensity, it's possible to drive the input prior to distorting it. The drive control lets you determine how much drive is applied to the input signal. Drum bus combines commonly used drum processing tools for shaping the mid-high range and filling out the low end, which we will look at in the following sections. The mid-high range frequency shaping tools are designed to add clarity and presence to drums such as snares and hi-hats. Crunch adjusts the amount of sine-shaped distortion applied to the high-mid frequencies. The damp control is a low-pass filter which removes unwanted high frequencies that can occur after adding distortion. The transient knob emphasizes or de-emphasizes the transients of frequencies above 100 Hz. Positive values add attack and increase sustain, resulting in a full, punchy sound. Negative values also add attack but decrease sustain. This tightens up the drums, giving them a sharper, more crisp sound with less room and rattle. Low-end enhancement. Drum bus's low-end enhancement is made up of 2 tools: a resonant filter, which dramatically boosts bass frequencies, as well as a decay control, which allows you to adjust the decay rate of both the incoming audio and the signal processed by the resonant filter. These tools help you to fill out the lower end of your drums. The boom knob adjusts the amount of low-end enhancement that the resonant filter produces. The bass meter lets you see the boom's effect on the signal, which can be particularly useful if you can't hear it. The frequency knob adjusts the frequency of the low-end enhancer. Force to note lets you tune the low-end enhancer by setting its frequency to the value of the nearest MIDI note. The decay control adjusts the decay rate of the low frequencies when the boom amount is set to 0%. The decay affects the incoming, post-drive and distortion signal only. When the boom level is adjusted above 0%, the decay affects both the incoming and processed signals. To solo the result of the low frequency enhancer, enable boom audition via the headphone icon. Output. The dry-wet control adjusts the balance between the processed and dry signals. The output gain slider sets the amount of gain applied to the processed signal. So let's jump into Ableton and have a little look at what drum bus does. Right, so here we are back in Ableton. I did a little bit of a boo-boo and I forgot to record Ableton's output. So here's the project file. I'll run you through what I did. My main use for drum bus is the transient shaper. Now, I use this when I'm making kicks, when I'm making snares, and adding those synthesized layers, or using samples, just a way to really smash those sounds and get the most out of it. So if you remember in the manual, it said moving the transient shaper can either lengthen or shorten the sustain after your main transient. So either way with this, it's going to have an initial transient. It's whether you have a big boom after it or a kind of a shorter, getting rid of the rattle, I think is the way that the manual put it. So let's have a listen here. I've got an operator with a G, because G note is always what I use for most of my kicks. And using the ADSR here, I've just brought the decay time down, and this is simply just a sine wave. So let's have a little listen. And to get that little click, we've got the pitch envelope. Just to give it that initial pitch down. So with our drum bus on, I'll grab a default one to start off with and then see what we got here. So the main thing that I do to play around with this, turn the compressor on first, and that really just, it's quite an aggressive but nice compressor. So if you listen to before and afterwards, really brings out that tone. And then the main thing I'll be messing with, I do use this boom function. This is the resonator, so it does bring out some more of those frequencies, like hitting it down a tube or something. But I'll start off with this transient knob, so I'm simply going to move it left and right and see what takes my fancy. And you can see, I can see here, so I'm cheating a bit. But I settled on over here. Over to the right, it sounds far too clicky for me. So bringing it to the left, that sounds a lot nicer. And then using this boom, you can see it's already on our G here. And we're just going to turn this boom amount up. And then we can have a look at the decay down here, which is going to be the length of time it is decaying that big boom. So somewhere around there is nice. And the crunch is going to add some of that kind of mid-high frequency. So let's just turn it right the way up and back it off. I mean, I quite like it up a bit higher than I had it earlier. This dampening is a low pass filter, so we can shove it all the way to the top if you want all of the frequencies to come through, or slowly bring it down to get rid of some of that clipping that was created by that crunch. So let's have a little listen. So let's have a listen to the one I created originally and this one now. So there's definitely differences between them. Subtle they are, but you can hear how that transient's hitting differently. So that's a real nice one to create your kick from scratch. And here's two that I've bounced down. So let's have a quick listen to these. And I have put these in a drum bus. So two very different kicks, soft G and a hard G there. So soft one and a harder one. And that's simply an operator being shoved through the drum bus. So I'll keep this off and let's have a look here at this next one. And this is the snare drum donk, I call it. So if my kick is in G, typically I'll put my snare a fifth up, which would be a D. So let's have a listen to this operator on its own. And this is the same operator as before with the same settings that I've then tweaked a little bit. I've changed the frequency up to D. And I've moved the transient knob. So let's have a listen without the drum bus and with the drum bus. And you can really hear the difference added there. It sounds like it's been through a resonator with that boom, and it's just real hard, crisp and crunchy. So let's take a look at span and see the before and after. That's a mad difference. You can see the amount of volume that's been added, but also those overtones that have been added. A quick look again. Up to. So bringing that layer in down here. Here is that layer solo. And make sure there's nothing on here. Oh, it's another drum bus. So here is the synthesized layer. And then I've got snare session dry, which is from the Ableton built-in, and that's for our initial transient hit. So what I've done is, using this snare as the initial transient, I've faded in the donk and then faded them both out to be a certain length. So let's listen to them together. And then grouped them and put the drum bus on. And again, just mess around with your soft, medium, hard. I would tend to keep it on soft because it's quite aggressive, but you can push it up to hard, especially when you're doing single sounds. When you come to use this as a drum bus, hard mode is pretty aggressive. But you can get away with it, like I say, for creating your single sounds. So let's have a little listen to messing around with the frequency again, keeping that at D, our boom, crunch, and of course the comp on to bring those two sounds together. So let's have a listen. And that's not been EQ'd either yet. This is just making the initial sound, so you could do some more work to that snare to kind of bring it together. But I rendered that down to this that we've got here. And if you look at it, we can see it's got a nice transient. It's got quite a big, thick sausage boy here, which is really what you want. Volume over time is what gives you these kind of fat, punchy drums. So it lingers for long enough that it's going to come through the mix there. So next up, I've just made a little drum beat using the using that kick and that snare. And let me mute my basses here. 0 and loop. So let me turn. This group is the kick, the snare, a couple of versions of the snare, and some hi-hats. And if I come up to our drum bus that's turned off, let's have a little listen to it. And then with drum bus on, we've only got it the dry wet at 10%, so we'll have a look at this in a minute. So drum bus on sounds like this. And having this down at 10%, I'm kind of doing a parallel compression kind of thing. So let's whack this to 100% and see what we're actually doing. So that's a bit much, that's a bit intense. We've got the compressor on, we've got it on hard mode, we've got the drive all the way up, the crunch all the way up, the boom all the way up, but then the dry wet all the way down. So this is a really nice way to kind of get that smashed sound, but retaining your initial transients and your initial kind of sounds. You could also use this on a return track if you rather have the control that way. It's totally up to you. So let me just grab a drum bus in and show you the kind of process I got to making that punchy punch sound. So I tend to work with this on 100% first of all, so I can hear exactly what I'm doing, and then back off after that. I find that when you're adding these kind of saturation sounds, you tend to want to boost it more and more and more because it's richer harmonics. So the way I kind of trick my ear is by having it all the way, and then I quickly tire of those harmonics and back them off to a nicer point. So let's have a listen. We'll keep everything down, this on 100%, and first of all I'll work on this first section here with the drive and the different compressors. So compressor on, off, then our drive amount. And then I find these soft, medium and hard do make quite a big of a difference, so let's have a little listen. I'd say that soft's probably a lot more usable unless you want this big smashy smash. So next let's move to the crunch section and we'll have a look at the transients. I'm always a lot more wary of using the transient shaper when it's working on a group, because you don't want all the transients to be doing the same thing. But it's still definitely worth messing around with. Let's have a look. So you can hear with that compression and the transients all the way to the left there, those hi-hats that are playing on their own are really jumping out a lot. Now that's not a sound I particularly like. I do my drums differently to this. When I'm working on a track, I usually have my hi-hats side changed to the kick and snare, and I'll be processing them separately. But for the sake of drum bus, this is the reason why I don't mess with the transient and don't comp it, especially not at this 100% rate. So let's put that back to normal, and this boom. Again, when using it as a drum bus, as a group effect, I'd hesitate to do too much in the frequency range with the resonance, because you want each of the different sounds to have their different resonances. That doesn't mean you can't use it. So G is our root note here, so let's boom it up a little bit. And remembering we have the little headphone down here if you want to hear just the boom. So what that shows me is that I need a high pass filter on my snare drum, because I really don't want that boom coming through there. So let's high pass that at say 180, maybe 150 we'll start off. And now let's listen through the group. Definitely more controlled. So now the whole thing together. And then, like I said earlier, we want to back off this dry wet. So immediately I'd go 50-50. Let's have a listen. And with it off. Now I'd still say that sounds like too much. Let's take it down to 10%. So I really do like keeping things at quite a low dry wet ratio, and even stacking them up maybe is another way to kind of slowly add those harmonics rather than go for one big crush. So if you turn this one to 2% and this one to, let's do the same 2%, and let me group them so I can easily turn them on and off. So now we have it before. It's a really nice way to bring out those harmonics, get some of that crushing going. Like I say though, do be wary of the dry wet, and for my personal taste, I keep the dry wet right the way up when I'm doing the initial sound design stage, but when using it on a bus, I would use it on a return track, and then the dry wet could still be 100. If you're not going to use it on a return track and you're going to use it on a group, keep that dry wet down so you're subtly adding those harmonics rather than just crushing it, unless just crushing it is what you like to do. So lastly, not just drums, this can be used on anything. So let me turn these three off and listen to this bass sound that I made. So this is just a simple operator patch, and I kind of did my gung-ho FM synthesis technique, which is click on the second one, have a bit of attack, the wave again, just do whatever you want, draw some bits in. Third one, I've got the sine again, level up somewhat, coarse, fine, it's almost random to be honest with you. And the last one again, we just make sure that, oh, the last one I've not turned on there, so just make sure that your initial one is on straight away, and then 2 and 3 fade in. It's only slightly different times, but it is different times. The FM synthesis happens over time. LFO, you want to put that on your filter, not on your ABCD. Down here, you just want to click one of your different arrangements for your oscillators. So this is the one I picked in the end, and let's have a listen to this sound. It's just kind of a high, there's a bit of movement in there, raspy sound. We're going to chuck the drum bus on it, and this note is, you could have guessed it, it's a G. So put my boom on G, whack that all the way up, compressor on, transients again, mess with it, I've taken it all the way to the left, a bit of drive, and we have this. Nice. I've talked about this before, kind of neurosine compression or sine compression. We just add neuro on it because we're neuro heads. You want these kind of full frequency mad sounds that you can then carve out of. So I'm going to use an auto filter, and I just drew some random notes in here, some random movement, and then slammed that into the glue compressor. So now this is what we have. And I bounce that down to audio just by right click, new audio track, and resample. So from here, I moved it around a bit and created a little beat. So this is what we've got, using drum bus to create some fatty old bass, and we're also using drum bus on our drums for some fatty old drums. Let's have a little listen. So it's that real kind of squishy, squashy, crunchy sound, which I absolutely love. And then you've got these nice kind of poppy drums coming through. So that's drum bus. Alright everyone, that'll do it for today's episode of Deep Dive. Hopefully you learnt a thing or two about drum bus. As always, project files are in the description. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and all of that good stuff. If there's anything that I've missed out that you do with drum bus, let me know in the comments below and I will catch up with you guys next time. Bye!